Welcome back into the Morning Blend Extra. We are now joined by Kyle Kite from Klaas Financial. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. How are you?
It's hard to complain. Well, a little cold this morning, but hey, you know what? The sunshine makes it feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
But retirement, I know everybody's planning on doing it at some point. I know I have quite a few years to go before I get anywhere close to that. So what should my first step be? And should I start now or later down the line?
Yeah, absolutely. So most of the time you definitely want to start as early as you can because again, time is your biggest asset when you're young because obviously compounding interest is a pretty powerful thing. So the first step, like I said, start as early as you can, but most people nowadays have access to a 401k or a 403b through their employer. So that's generally the best step for most people. Definitely just start, even if it's only 1%, 2% a year, just start somewhere. A lot of plans now have an auto escalation feature where they just automatically go up by 1% a year. That works for a lot of people because generally if you get a raise every year, you start increasing the contributions. Before you know it, you're at that 10 to 15% that most people hear is a good goal to have, obviously. So.
Yeah. So, okay, I know I'm young. I already have a Roth IRA, believe it or not.
Good.
Have a good chunk in there. But so what if I'm behind? What kind of steps would you recommend if somebody who maybe had some financial troubles early on in their life and now trying to start building towards retirement?
Yeah, it's definitely easier if you start early because life hasn't quite gotten to its full extent yet with kids and all that kind of stuff. But if you've, like you said, had some missteps or stuff along the way, it's never too early to start. Generally speaking, you're just going to have to save more, right? So when you're younger, if you start with that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%, that's great. But when you get later on and starting later, it might have to be 15, 20, 25% because you don't have that time for the money to accumulate inside that account. So.
Okay, so 401k, IRA, and Roth IRA. Can you kind of tell the differences between all of those?
Yeah, so it really comes down to what type of contributions you're making. So traditional IRA, traditional 401k, you're making money, you're investing money pre-tax. So you're getting a tax deduction on your income when you put that money in. It grows tax deferred and then it comes out, you pay taxes when you pull the money out. Roth, on the other hand, you've already paid the tax when you put the money in. It gets to grow tax-free and come out tax-free. So tax-free is always better than any type of taxes. So generally speaking, you're younger, lower income, a Roth is probably the right way to go for a lot of people.
Okay, so when it comes out tax-free at the end, is it based on how much you withdraw per year? If I know tax brackets they're ever changing, but at the end, is it going to be however you're drawing much per year, or is it how much you have saved up when it comes to how's that taxed?
No, it's good. So out of a traditional 401k or IRA, you're only going to pay tax on whatever you take out in that year. So let's say you take out $100,000, that's all going to count as taxable income that year. Doesn't matter if there's $3 million in the account, you're only paying tax on that $100,000 that you pulled out in that scenario.
Okay, so what happens if I don't have access to a traditional IRA or employer retirement plan like a 401k? What do you recommend?
Yeah, so a lot of people in this situation, if they're probably going to be self-employed, independent contractors, that kind of stuff. If you're self-employed, yes, you don't have access to a traditional 401k through an employer, obviously, but they do have what they call solo 401ks for self-employed people. And there's also something called a SEP IRA, which those contribution limits are higher than just like a plain old traditional IRA. So generally speaking, if you've got some earned income, there's a way to save for retirement. Just depends on what account we have to use to do that.
Okay, gotcha. So you mentioned earlier about employer matching. Can you kind of explain what that is? Because I know you have like 1-2% match. Is that like income you have, like if you're setting aside 1% of your income, are they matching that, or are they matching 1% of what you put into your 401k?
Yeah, good question. So it depends on how the plan is set up. So kind of one of the most common scenarios would be the employer would match 100% of the first 3% that you put in, and then maybe 50% on the next 2 or 3. So let's say you put in 5, they might match 4, 4.5, 5, or something like that. So generally speaking, you want to take advantage of those matches because it's free money. So
that it is. So as a financial institution, what do you guys do? I know you give feedback of, hey, like this is where you should do a 401k or Roth IRA, but do you guys help kind of steer people to our investments, or can we give you money and like, hey, invest for us, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we do a little bit of everything. So we have just a strictly financial planning arm of our firm and division, and in that division, you're literally just paying us like an hourly fee. Maybe your 401k at work, you just need some help picking how should I invest this through work, but I need to know what debt should I be paying off, how much should I be saving, planning for college, that kind of stuff. But then we also have another division where we actually do the investing, do the trading for people, all that kind of stuff. So we truly can help anybody. Just depends on what kind of help they're looking for from us.
That's fair enough. So I know retirement for myself is quite a few years away. Yeah. What do you think the best time to retire is? Is there a perfect age, or is it kind of vary on how old you are or like how your situation is?
Yeah, it mostly comes down to goals and what your plan is, what's your retirement going to look like, right? So like I said, funded contentment is one of my favorite type of definitions for retirement. So it is, what's your version of retirement? Is it working 20, 30 hours a week, doing something you enjoy, chasing those passion projects? Or is it, you know what, I just want to hang out with the grandkids or sit on the beach and, you know, sip Mai Tais, right? Everybody's going to be different and everybody's goal is different. So traditionally speaking, most people are looking at that retirement somewhere in that 60 to 65 range. But again, it all depends on what you're shooting for.
Okay, is there any benefit to maybe delaying retirement for a few years?
So yeah, when it comes to Social Security, you actually get a raise. They have what they call delayed retirement credits. So your Social Security will grow all the way up until age 70. So there could be a pretty significant benefit by delaying your drawing Social Security. Now that doesn't mean that you can't retire and stop working if you have the other funds to support yourself and aren't relying on Social Security. So.
Okay, that makes sense. Yep. So we've talked about, you know, saving. Is there a magic number of what we need to aim for? Like I know a lot of people say $1 million, but is that realistic? Especially with you know, inflation 2% every year, at least the ideal inflation.
Yeah, absolutely. So $1 million is always a good goal, but again, that was back in the early 2000s, late 90s when that, like I think it was a Money Magazine article or something that mentioned the first $1 million. Nowadays, that's probably more like 1.5, 2 million, something like that, right? So, but that's a goal because everybody's retirement is going to cost a different amount of money.
Yeah.
As I said, if your goal is just to hang around with the grandkids, take a couple trips a year, that's not the same as somebody that's going to travel around Europe for 3 months, right? Those income needs are drastically different. So it depends on what type of retirement you want to have. So.
Yeah, and speaking of type of retirement, where can we go to, you know, what's your information so that we can get a hold of you guys, maybe your website? Can you go ahead and explain that? Because again, I think a lot of it depends on what ideally you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a lot of information on our website. It's klaasfinancial.com. On there we have a video library where we get into more in depth on some of these topics, traditional IRAs, 401ks, taxes, all that kind of stuff, because it all plays into it. We've also got, you know, like white papers or blog posts, that kind of stuff on there as well. So like I said, it's klaasfinancial.com. You can reach out to our email address through there as well, and hopefully you'll find some good kind of free resources that'll.
And then one last question. If you want to get a hold of you guys and maybe set up a date to plan, would you rather call, website, or email? What do you think is the best way to do that?
Yeah, so all of them will work. We can do it either way. A lot of people do tend to reach out by email, and then we call them to set up an intro meeting and things like that. And there's no obligation for that first intro meeting. And a lot of times we can help people in just a 30-minute phone call because they have a quick question of, hey, this is what I have for debt. Where should I start knocking these out, right? So, yep.
Oh, that answers a lot of my questions. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, DJ.